Well, welcome to this episode of the podcast. We are excited to have a conversation with, I'll call him a new old friend because we have a lot of friends in common. But Ron, welcome to the show. First of all, let me say that.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you. It's good to have you. And I'm looking forward to just capturing a little bit of your story. By way of introduction, you can tell us who you are. But Ron works in the area. Pontic Hills is just an amazing part of the world. He is in agriculture and he's got a background in that. And the reason I point that out in the beginning, and you can talk to this, Ron, any way you want to, but um, there's a lot of people in our space trying to use business to have a positive impact on various communities around the world. And he's in agriculture, and a lot of people say, well, that doesn't work. Well, it does work. In fact, so much of the world and the part of Pontic Hills he works in is agriculture based. To not have that background and work in it is to miss the most obvious thing right in front of your face. So, Ron, give us a little background on you and your education, your experience in agriculture, and how God has used that to use you in this part of the world.
Yeah, wow. Thanks. It's a real privilege to be able to be on and connect with people who are like-minded. You know, uh, I had the privilege of growing up in Oregon on a farm. I had parents who were in ministry, but my grandfather had an orchard, and it was kind of a direct sales orchard, and we had every sort of fruit and nut tree you can possibly imagine. And I grew up working out there, junior high, high school, absolutely loved it. Learning how to prune and thin and how to pick the fruit and how to do the sales. And my heart was really in it. And it was hard work, but I loved looking back at the end of the day saying, wow, look what was able to be accomplished. And I just loved partnering with God and his nature and what he was doing. Um, Praying about college, a lot of people felt I had been so involved in kids ministries and in youth ministry all the way going through with parents in ministry. It was just a shoe-in that I should go to Bible college, but I couldn't imagine having a desk job, so to speak. It's not what I felt like I was made for. I was passionate about ministry. I had preached in church several times, um, and it led different groups, but I really felt like God was telling me I needed to study agriculture at Oregon State. And so I ended up on the Oregon State campus and studied agriculture, botany, forestry, kind of cobbled together my own multiple degree thing. And just, I loved understanding more and more about God's creation and who he was and how to partner with him in agricultural side of it. Well, when I was graduating in agriculture, I had to do an internship. And I was praying, okay, God, what would you have me do with this internship? Because I knew I'd seen some of my friends' lives, how that had kind of staged them for the next thing that God was calling them into in that next phase. And I'm like, oh, okay, what do you want here? And he said, I want you to go internationally and plant the church. And I was like, wait, hang on a second here. We had this conversation before college. I didn't go to the Bible college. I went to Oregon State and studied ag. And, I didn't know or see how God would connect those dots. But I ended up having an internship where I went and worked on a Bible college campus in Portugal. They had an orange grove that needed management, re-landscaping work, and my advisor at Oregon State accepted this as my internship program, and I went and did that for a year. Wow, God started opening up my eyes to all kinds of possibilities. First thing I did was I worked with, right after this internship was over, I had been involved with a church there in Portugal and a couple of guys who had a heart for doing a green industries agricultural style internship to help Teen Challenge graduates be able to come out and be equipped with a profession that could help them in life. And so I launched my first BAM back in 2005, and it was quite the quite the experience. And God's had us on quite the adventure. It was in 2012 that I first took a trip here to the Pontic Hills, and people who were bringing me into the region, it's a country of 80 million people, and there's so few believers. At the time, we were told there's less than 4,000 evangelical believers amongst 80 million people in the country. And Being a Muslim country, just seeing what that looked like, that I'd never been in a context like that before. And, hearing the call to prayer go off and seeing just the depravity, not having the church and what that meant. But then our guides took us out to the Pontic Hills and explained there's 10 million people living mostly rurally. All these hillsides covered in farms. 10 million people, 10,000 villages, but they said it was a zero zone with zero churches, zero resident Christians, and no one there to plant the church. And it really got a hold of our heart. And we started looking at the equation, and man, people living in rural areas, farmers that are isolated, it touched our heartstrings.
And I want to kind of go back and walk through some of that with you because I hear you loud and clear, and I think about, I wonder how many people even listening to this today, and I hope this gets to a lot of guys that have that heart that you have. Number one, for seeing God in agriculture. I mean, it is, in my way of thinking, it is the oldest of all the professions. I know there's a joke around that, but I really think it is the oldest of all professions. And when God created Adam and Eve, He put them in the garden to work it, right? To tend it, and to it was agribusiness, if you want to put a label on it. And so that's a beautiful thing. And I would hope somewhere that some of the younger folks out there that are having that same struggle you did, obviously I should go this way, and they'd hear God's voice to say, no, let's go this way. I can use this in what I'm doing in the world. I love that. And then the numbers, the 80 million people, 10 million in the rural areas. I mean, just literally just, I'll say isolated. I don't mean that in a negative. I mean, there's some good there, but you get there and God opens up your heart for that. Have you always, Ron, have you always had that tenderness for people, or is that something that really began to come alive when you moved to Pontic Hills? Or when you at first visited Pontic Hills, I should say.
Yeah. You know, when I had been in Portugal, I had the opportunity to go to the Azore Islands of Portugal for a year. And, there's a string of 9 islands, about 500,000 people, and only 7 evangelical churches scattered amongst the 9 islands. Even the largest island, which had 3 of the churches, is only 6 miles wide and 20 miles long. But most people that lived in these little villages, they never got out. And, the big churches, the churches that were there, the preaching points, only existed in the big cities. And it's when I really started seeing the mobility issue, especially of rural agriculture and emerging markets, like the Azore Islands. The island we were on, San Miguel, it's a string of 3 volcanoes connected together. And the crazy story that just floored me was there was a village in the bottom of one of these craters. And there were some of the old ladies there that had never actually even seen the ocean because they'd never traveled away from their home, even going up the hill.
I can say, what distance was that? That was not,
It would be like 2 miles. They had never gone 2 miles from their village. And they'd lived their entire lives.
That's
and
hard to imagine, but it's a great illustration.
Rurally, people in rural farming areas are not very mobile. Their whole world is right there, which as a farmer, I can totally empathize with it. I love the idea of having a small world where you intimately know your land and your neighbors and you're close. And I get it. But when there's not the affluency, when there's not the ability to travel, you don't have a car, how are you going to get out? The chores are heavy and hard. There's a lot of work to do. Even once I landed here in the Pontic Hills, hearing people talk, it was lush, it's green, it's verdant, looked a lot like the Azore Islands. But hearing 2 different people talking out in one village, I was just playing fly on the wall one day, and they were complaining about the fact that they were only able to get down to the big city a couple times a year because between the cost of the transportation, not having the work to do it, having to stay someplace overnight, all those expenses, they don't have a lot of cash. They have what they grow, and that's a large part of what their income is. But they're like, I can only afford to do this once or twice a year. The other guy's like, oh, I'm rich. I can do it 4 times a year. But the reality is, if if we're looking at a hub model, if there's a large church that's planted in one of the large cities in the Pontic Hills, any of these people out in these 10,000 villages, they're not going to be traveling back and forth on a Sunday morning to be able to attend.
Right.
How are they going to have that local witness? How are they actually going to have a preaching point access nearby to them? That's what really began touching our heart.
I know there are listeners to the podcast who are working in similar areas, similar numbers, similar challenges.
Yeah,
Um, but there aren't many who go to those places. They mainly go to the cities. There's an entire strategic movement around being in the cities, and I get that. You can make an
yeah,
argument that that's the way to reach the masses. But 10 million people in 10,000 villages, that's not a small population. That's pretty
yeah,
amazing, and that's just you. So
yeah,
multiply that by the how many of you are there around the world. This is a big deal. So the and I know you didn't go there just to do farming. It's obvious, Ron, you love farming. You grew up on a farm.
yeah,
You get it. I love your term, and partnering with God in planting and growing things. It's a great way to think about it. But you bring a business aspect to it as well. This is not just improved methodology. This is not just improved horticulture. This is not just improved, fertilizers or whatever. I mean, I'm sure all of that's a part of what you do. But what is it that you actually do that people are looking and saying, "We're glad this guy's here."
yeah, yeah. Those are great. You know, the first thing that attracted us to the region was the desperate need. And it was God just getting a hold of us and saying, I love these people and I want to know, are you available? And we first of all said, yes, we're available. And once we said we were available, he began opening our eyes to a way to get in and leveraging and realizing that, okay, he is the master and he's the organizer and he sees 3 moves ahead than we ever do. And he was able to take a lot of that background, that training, the experiences I'd had in life, and then help me understand the amazing agricultural need/opportunity of this region. Because though there's 10,000 villages here with millions and millions of people, there's pretty much one crop. And there's not a lot of places in the world that this crop is grown. So it's hazelnuts. And these Pontic Hills grow 50% of the global supply. The entire countryside is absolutely blanketed. It looks like one massive hazelnut forest. A squirrel could run for 100 miles and never leave a tree. But the thing that really floored us was once we started looking and understanding and reading and researching, the average farm size here is less than 5 acres. 5-acre plots, over 1 million acres of hazelnuts throughout this region. And those statistics are incredible. There's a huge global market. When people saw that we were foreigners and that we were coming into the area, they immediately thought that we were going to get into the export market. Oh, you've got networking channels and you're going to be buying up hazelnuts and you're going to be exporting them. And, that market here is actually very full. There's a lot of really well-established, wholesalers that sell the stuff abroad. Most of it goes to Europe. 80% of it goes into confectionery, especially into chocolate, things like Nutella.
I can say I love Nutella, man. I'm all about this product.
I read a statistic recently that they make more Nutella every year than the weight of the Empire State Building. Like that just boggles the mind, doesn't it?
It
But
does, but I can believe it.
that one company buys 25 to 40% of the global supply of hazelnuts every single year. And so about 10 years ago, they realized we're growing in popularity around the world. People just like you, Mike, they're excited about Nutella, which is great, and they want to sell more product. But Nutella, a chocolate hazelnut spread really should have 50% hazelnut in it to taste the best. But it has less than 15%. Well, if they're buying 25 to 40% of the world's crop, there's not even enough in the world to be able to hit the best flavor at 50%. So when they realized, okay, we are growing, but the global supply isn't really there for us to grow as fast, what in the world could we do? It takes 12 to 15 years There's not a lot of places in the world that you can grow hazelnuts well, but the places that you can, if you plant a new orchard, it takes over a decade to really hit mature production. They looked around and said, these Pontic Hills, we could go in there and we could help these farmers, because the reality is places like America, where I was working with hazelnut growers, we grow about 3 to 4% of the world's production in Oregon. We get 3.5 tons per hectare. Globally, the average is 2.5 to 3 tons per hectare. So Oregon's doing pretty good. The Pontic Hills, however, 0.8 tons per hectare. The climate is perfect. What Nutella saw was that if you simply prune the right way, fertilize the right way, do some of these technology things, you can triple those yields and make them 2.5 tons per hectare in just 3 to 4 years. So they're like, we need more product. The country that we're in, these Pontic Hills, they grow 0.8 tons per hectare. And if you can triple that in just a few years, Nutella was like, we're going to go in there and we're going to train those people to be able to do those increases. We'll be able to buy more product from them. So they got a hold of 250 micro farms all across the region. They improved the yield. They've trained through 7 to 10 managers who had a work crews that went out with them, and they managed all of these. They improved the yields on all of them, and they went out and started sharing in all the villages. Look, come see what we've done. We've tripled the yields. Prune like this, fertilize like this, do this work. It was kind of like evangelism, going out and spreading the good news 2 by 2. And after 5 years and millions of dollars of investment, they had improved every one of those 250 micro farms. But they had less than 1% of people adopt the practices. Because what they realized, it's not about education. It's about, in Christianese, we would say, discipling people to do the work. It takes hand-on, doing it together with the people, helping solve their individual problems and find out what the opportunities are. At the end of 5 years, 3 years ago, they closed that program down. And it was crazy because we'd watched the entire process, and we had seen the amazing opportunity and proof of concept. And we had talked with all of the local people, why are you not doing this? The reality here is that in the Pontic Hills, 10 years ago, there were subsidies. There weren't as many pests and diseases. There was younger people that were here to do the work. Farm size was a little bit larger on average. It shrunk because of inheritance. But over the last 10 years, farms that were 5 acres used to provide farms that were here used to provide a Pontic Hills median income. So the median income of the country, they were able to get that off of a 5-acre farm. Now, they're only getting 2 months worth of income off of that same farm. So over it's gone down by 1 month in each of the last 10 years of income. So the reality is that today, so many of these farmers have gradually had to go abroad to find work. They're now absentees. They're not managing their farms well. They don't have the resources to put into it. Prune this way, fertilize this way. That costs money to do the inputs. That takes training to know how to prune. It takes some equipment to know what to spray. And they just don't have the resources to be able to do this. So what we're doing as a company is we come in for those who are absentees or those who are elderly. We lease their orchards from them. They continue living on the house. They have their little subsidy farm next to them. They have their kids and their grandkids, and they have a place to host. They have that. But who's going to manage the farm itself? That's where we step in. We lease the farm from them. We do a crop share. They get the first amount of kilos that come in off of that. And we say anything that comes above this, well, that's what we'll get for our management fee. That way you have no questions. You know exactly what you're going to get every year. Let me tell you, this has been an absolute lifesaver for all of our 50 clients that we currently manage farms for. And so we manage the farms, and we find out who in these villages needs jobs. So we connect the farms that desperately need work done correctly in the right way with villagers who desperately need employment because there's no jobs in these villages. We provide the professional training. We provide the resources for them to be able to do the work, and then we manage the whole thing. The crazy thing is that these Pontic Hills, though they produce 50% of the world's hazelnuts, none of them are farm traceable. There's undocumented, who knows who's working on the land, and they don't know what products are going to go down. If you're a global buyer, those are some question marks you don't want to be buying.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have traceability. That's very important. And in every other nut product, tree nut product, traceability is paramount. And so what we're doing is we're providing documented, traceable hazelnuts to a global market that's eager for it, providing jobs in villages and solutions for farm owners.
So many questions come to my mind, Ron, when you're sharing this. One is just knowing that in more and more of the world's market, not just in something like nuts, but in so many products, the ethical supply chain movement, can apply to who is the employees, how they treated, that sort of thing. But here also, just the content of a food substance is so important. And most people don't even think about that. They assume all this is happening, and you're saying, no, don't assume. That's one question. But the big question I've got is when you brought this in, bringing a crop share arrangement, was that new, or were they like, oh yeah, we know what that means, or were they really suspicious? How did they accept the idea?
So originally, this is actually rooted on a lot of years of asking people, asking questions, finding out how things are done. Historically, there had been a crop share percentage system where if someone, was absent or elderly, maybe they would hire someone in the village to be able to come and manage the farm for them. And it was maybe a 50-50 split. And then things got a little bit more expensive and complicated, and it became a 3-to-1 split, and then a 4-to-1 split, and then a 5-to-1 split. And now they're talking 6-to-1 split. The challenge that we saw was that there was always a little bit of frustration or questioning. Did the manager do the right work? Are they performing the right things? Our productivity is going down. What's going on here? And so we're flipping that equation where it's a crop share, but it's a fixed amount crop share. So we'd say the first year per hectare will give maybe 200 kilograms. And then the second year we'll give 205 kilograms. And the third year, 210. There's a little bit of incentive we have a contract, a lease contract, but in these parts of the world, a legal lease contract doesn't have the same amount of weight as it might have in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So we have a legal contract. We get the village chief to sign off on it, that he knows that we're managing for this, and then we talk to the village chief. Are there other farms here? Or are there people here who want jobs? Well, he's become all of a sudden really popular because he's bringing jobs and solutions to his village. So he's happy to sign on that as a witness for the fact that this contract, so there's a social element that holds these contracts in place. And then we add this little bonus every year that they stay with us. And that really reinforces that this is a very solid contract. It's very, very important for us as a company operating in an emerging market like this to cement those contracts in this way. But that crop share with that little bit of a bonus has really built on a historical foundation so people could approach it and understand what it was, but it solved a lot of the challenges that they had with the accusations of how much actually came in or was the right work actually being done. It gives them peace of mind, is saying, okay, we know and you're taking all the risk, but we're saying we take the risk, but we also take the reward.
Yeah, you really you put sunlight on everything,
Yeah.
and that's I was going to ask you and I still want to hear a little bit more on this, but you already answered some of it. How did you go about establishing trust and credibility? I mean, they've been through something like this before. Nutella came in and worked with them. Others have probably come in and tried to work with them. So I think you're in a bit of a trust deficit to begin with. How did you work through that and come into a place now where they do trust you? You mentioned 50 different clients right now. I'm assuming that the goal is more, but as you can manage them. But how did you win the trust?
Yeah. We had been in country for several years, learned language, had talked with a lot of people. Those things helped. Finding early adopters in any new business venture is always that big challenge. And so we worked our tails off in the first year to find our early adopters. And those early adopters, God was gracious. He brought them to us. We worked hard for them. We built solid relationships. At the end of the day, relationship is key. It's all about sitting around. In our part of the world, it's drinking tea. I
Mm-hmm.
had hundreds and hundreds of cups of tea to get those early adopters. Um, but the
Yeah.
fruit of that was that in the second year, those early adopters provided a testimony for others saying, wow, this was an amazing solution. I got my payment. I didn't have to work hard on my orchard. I got to have vacation time. I actually got to go to the beach. I actually was able to spend time with my family who was here, or I didn't have to run around and try to figure out who's going to actually do the work that I'm going to maybe manage and hire it out, which is becoming more and more difficult here. Being able to put all that frustration to bed and being able to earn the same amount of profit or more than they would have been otherwise, man, that second year, it was easier to find clients.
Yeah.
Last year, we actually had to turn away 90% of the people who came knocking on our door asking us to come and manage their farms. Our coffers are full for next year. Our waiting list is absolutely to the maximum. We're saying we're going to bring on 100 acres a year for each of the next 5 years is what our goal is. We found this is kind of the right speed that we can train local people in this work. And so we know that if we had the capacity right now, there's 500,000 farms in this region, the Pontic Hills region. Between 200 and 300,000 of them would sign on with us if we had the capacity for it right now. There's that much demand, and there is nobody else operating in this space.
Amazing.
So it's a huge, huge opportunity and an amazing blessing to the community.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, just economically and even socially, or sociologically, I should say. I know working in another part of the world, not too far from you, it got so bad economically that the men in particular had to move away
Yeah,
for them it was the mothership was Moscow, and they would have to move away just to get jobs to provide for their family back home, thousands of miles away. And
yeah,
sadly, many of them never came back.
yeah.
It was a terrible rip, terrible tearing of the social fabric. So I can understand the demand. It does make a difference. What about and I know your heart, you're obviously there. We use words like impact and community transformation, wanting to see people blessed, wanting to see families stronger, wanting to see, all of life become better. This is not one
Yeah,
dimensional, right? It's incredibly, the word I like is holistic. It touches all
holistic.
parts of life. This does. What are you focused on, sort of in each of the dimensions as you're trying to bring goodness to the area that you're working in? I mean, obviously, you're one couple. Sounds like
Yeah,
there needs to be hundreds of you, but there's you, and so what are you focused on?
yeah. So we're really trying to we're building a scalable model is really at the end of the day what we're wanting to achieve. And so we're training our first managers. We're training those managers to train a next generation of managers. We have new technologies that we're bringing on board. We have expat teammates that have come and are now joining with us. In these parts of the world, it's a little bit challenging sometimes. A company in this particular country has a 5-to-1 work visa ratio. So in order to be here, there has to be 5 local employees for every foreigner that's involved with the company. So early on, we had to have 5 employees. Now we have to have 10 employees. We now have close to 15 employees that are working with us full time. So we have capacity for another expat team member to come and join. So those are really cool things. Socially, the fact that in these villages, if we can create jobs, just like you're saying, it allows people who are traveling for work that want to be in these farms, want to be in their heritage. These farms, these been farmed by the same families for 3 and 4 generations. And so for them to leave, it's just heartbreaking. They don't want to leave their land. They want to be here. And to create job opportunities for them, yes, we want to have those impact opportunities. The other is just when I grew up in America, and the whole concept of Century Farm, this beautiful plaque that Century Farms, they've been in there for 100 years, sitting out in front. They brought farmers a lot of pride. You know, our family's been farming this region for a long time. We're able to produce lot traceable hazelnuts, and we're able to put a lot number that goes directly back to someone's family farm. And we're turning that into hazelnut spread that we are beginning to market to different places, Europe to America, that has a little QR on there with a little video of that family that is able to see, okay, my farm has value and is important to the rest of the world. My hazelnuts are being sold now in America and in Europe, and they care about us. That restores so much to a family in honor, in dignity, in joy. So this is an impact that we absolutely love.
That's huge. I've seen the same, not the same, but certainly similar approach with certain people working among coffee growers,
Yeah,
building a certain visceral heart connection between, the guy that's growing the coffee on his 5 acre
yeah.
plot, and the American or the European or whoever, even the city dweller for that matter, who's
Yeah.
drinking the coffee, and they realize, everybody takes joy and pride in it. It's a beautiful thing to see. It really is.
You feel unseen if you're just blended into the background, but all of a sudden I'm seen. And that's a fundamental part of how God's made us, is to want to have connectivity, to want to have community, to want others to be able to see something that you value and have joy in, that they would also value and have joy in it as well. So we want to bring those sorts of social impacts into this region: jobs, joy. You know, the spiritual impact that we want to bring is probably the biggest. You know, we early on out here, we would share with people about Christ, and oftentimes people would make a decision. I want to follow, and sometimes they did that for other motives, but quite often they made it for the reason that they really wanted to have their lives transformed. They wanted to follow Jesus. And in a region that prides itself in being 100% Muslim, um, you don't get a job here based on your own merit. You have it because your clan has connections. When you've rejected Islam, you bring shame on your family, and so your employer, it's no longer an honor that they're giving you that job. It's bringing shame on everyone. So many of the people we connected with, they would lose their jobs. And if you've lost your job here in an economically repressed region, then we're not able to stay. So we knew that we needed to find ways that we could create a merit-based employment opportunity that gave the opportunity. You're not going to get fired for becoming a believer. You can remain. And so our heart's desire is, can we create capacity for locals to remain so that they can be a witness, that they can live out their life as they become disciples, they begin to disciple others in their world. Can they do that in their villages? And can we create the opportunity for them to be a blessing, financially, to their villages, to their communities, emotionally, socially, and spiritually?
Hmm. It is interesting. I think there's still so much. Our listenership is pretty aware of some of the things you're talking about. Not all the details of what happens when a Muslim believes, but the majority of the world as a whole, take the masses, they just have such a false concept of what life is like, of what happens to somebody raised in a particular tradition, raised in a particular culture, and they see it very much. You mentioned, making a decision. They see it very much as a decision, and it's so much more than that. And I think I love that you brought that up, and I love that there is a full-orbed solution that you've built, right? I mean, there is community, there is
Yeah,
dignity, there is employment. My work started so many years ago in one of the stands, thousands of miles east of where you are, of course, many thousands of miles. Um, but learning to see that same dynamic and being able to use job creation as a means of alleviating the suffering that came with just something as simple as declaring faith.
yeah, yeah. The reality is that we this country, there is what has been identified recently as 176 churches, and amongst all 80 million people, and that two of them theoretically could be considered self-supporting. There's not the indigenous church in this country. And then you go to the place that would be insulated and isolated and rural, and how many generations, how long is it going to be before places like this are impacted? We saw, okay, there's all these obstacles, but what we realized was that God, through agriculture, was giving us an opportunity to turn those obstacles into opportunities. Because there's not agricultural training being offered by the government, because you can't choose, I want to go to university, I have land, I'm a farmer, I want to learn more about farming. Those opportunities don't exist here. Most of these rural people barely can write their names. The reality is, we who are farmers in places that are blessed with strong Christian heritage have a huge opportunity to come into the 1040 window, to go into the places that would be the least reached, and to bring what we have, agricultural understanding and knowledge, and help that become the opportunity to establish the very first churches in this region. That's exciting. That's exciting.
It is exciting, and I think as you're sharing this, Ron, I think about God and Moses. With the what is in your hand question.
Yeah.
I've given you whatever you have. In his case, a shepherd's staff. In your case, agriculture. It's like, okay, what's in your
Yeah.
hand? You don't have to go away and get some other thing. You have what you need to go and be among the people and see God work. Normally in a conversation like this, as we start drawing to a close, I would ask you a little bit about what's been the biggest challenge. You kind of done a good job outlining the challenge in a positive way, but it's definitely challenging. What's been your biggest breakthrough so far? You look at and you kind of put your stake in the ground and said that was a God thing right there.
I we get to do so much as a company, and currently everyone who is working in our company would identify as a Muslim. They know that they're working for a Christian. We read the Bible quite frequently this is what's in my motivation. I share and I testify, and this is why we do what we do. This is why I do what I do, and we do that in our manager meetings. We have an agricultural manager and we have a client manager, and we sit down, we look at our quarterlies, we do all this stuff, and it's great. But we've recently, early on, my managers, I was giving them employee reviews, which in this culture, it's not a merit-based culture. You have your job because your plan got you your job, and you will have that job no matter what your performance is.
Yeah.
That's just, it's a problem in these regions. We want to say we're not going to give favoritism to those who are Christians in our company, or we don't want people to come to faith because they want to get ahead in our company. We knew we had to have a merit-based employment opportunity for people. Mm-hmm. How do we do this? By having employee reviews. How are you doing as an employee? So for our managers, we did this right away. This last year, we had our managers give employee reviews to the employees who are working for them, and I got to sit in on those meetings. Well, the next day I was debriefing with my manager. He had gone out into the fields and he had talked with the guys in the fields and about how all that went. He came back and I was giving him his review, and we were debriefing from all this. And he said to me, in debriefing with these guys, they said, we've been raised in such a culture that we were told we should never even eat with a Christian. But now we're working for a Christian. Well, we're getting a lot of flack. People are coming to us saying, why are you working for a Christian? Why are you? And we tell them, we've worked all of our lives for the people of this culture, but now I'm working for a Christian who I would never even have eaten with before, and I would never go back if I had the choice and do otherwise. What we experience in this is so different They're so excited that I, as an owner of a company, will come out and work alongside them in the fields. They feel seen because of things like employee reviews and being able to hear back from them. They understand that we're working together in a company. They're not simply working for me. And the fact that people who don't yet identify as a follower of Christ are facing persecution, but they're already being able to give a response, that they see something in the kingdom culture that's drawing their hearts in, that they're willing to defend that.
Wow.
And those ripples reverberate across the entire community, because when you have a place that's never met Christians, there's all kinds of scary things that the politicians say, that their religious leaders say about who Christians are and about who Christ is. But they have never encountered the real thing. Now that they're encountering, they're asking the question, wait a second, we've been lied to, maybe, because this is nothing like what we were told it was like. Maybe we're being lied to as well about who Christ really is. We're impacting the culture. We're creating opportunity. There's certain individuals, I could tell you story after story of people that we've had such deep conversations with. But as we disciple those people towards and then into faith, the communities around them that had such high barriers because of misinformation and lies about who Christians were, when these people become followers of Christ, that social pressure will be lowered for them, because they'll be with an example of who Christ and Christians are supposed to be, that's informed by something that's real. They're falling in love with the kingdom, and they're doing it as a culture, and we get to have that level of impact. That, for us, is the coolest thing.
That's a fantastic, Ron. And I think as you're sharing it, and I'm gonna give you the last word, but as you're sharing it, I think about where Paul said, we have the aroma of Christ.
Yeah,
And so
that's great.
people, by being around you and you others like you, are able to experience a little bit of Christ in reality, not by hearing, not by reading, not by propaganda, but just like, wow, there's something real here. And that is ultimately why you do what you do.
We've seen time and again that, yes, the information's important. This is the Bible. This is what it says. But when they on one side have no ability to understand what that actually means, there's no framework for that, what that's supposed to look like. It just seems ambiguous. On top of that, they are so disenfranchised with faith in general in this region, because their argument of, we're supposed to be doing this as a Muslim society, but we're not doing the things that we're called to. It's all fake. They feel lied to on so many fronts. Here's just another piece of information that's religious. But what they encounter is that it's real.
Yeah.
And then, so we proclaim, then we live it out. And then they say, wait, go back and say that again, because I didn't hear you the first time. But now that I've seen it, now I'm ready to actually hear it again. And then when we go again and say it, now they have ears to hear and they have eyes to see. And that is the privilege of getting to do proclamation and discipleship in a region like this.
Well, I think that is the last word. I'm not going to even try to add to that. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Ron, for spending time with me and sharing your story.
Thank you. It's been a privilege. Thanks for having me on.